You, any of their, on there.
Why?
Oh, that's called,
What are they? They're terrorists.
oh, obviously, you and I see black and white on that, but most people,
Very black.
most Americans see black and white on that, but unfortunately, people have their own. All right. All right, so I will start, and then I can answer your questions afterwards.
Okay.
Just to keep it away from politics, but to keep it on Jewish subjects, obviously. I always, of course, want questions, but I'll just start off with a Jewish thought on this. And obviously there isn't an answer to anything, but there is a response to everything, is how I kind of look at the Jewish reply and response to every single negative thing that happens in our world. And the Jewish response is always unequivocal, that you fight things that are black and dark with light by doing extra kind things, mitzvot specifically I'm talking about, and increasing in that light in this world. And the end of the day, God owes it to us to protect us. I have a friend that lives in Israel, an older couple, they're in their 80s. She just made Aliyah with her husband a year ago, the cake lady, if you remember her. And she gives us updates all the time. They live in Jerusalem now. And she wrote, even with everything going on, and you see it regardless of where you live, she still feels safer there than the United States, but she has lived her entire life. And that's its own, you're in the holiest, I'm going to say, country in the world, the holiest city in the world. And sadly, these tragedies happen all around the world. This is just so dark that we're seeing it, and it's to us. But think about all the violence and crime that happened in America. Nothing like that. It's savagery. And so there's no excuse ever. But the short answer is that to fight hatred, you have to use, of course, war for that. But I'll answer you in a second. But you have to use mitzvah. You have to use actions that our actions here create a protection in Israel. And that is very important to remember. So whether that means that you now add a daily prayer to your repertoire of prayers, or maybe you don't pray at all and you say, I'm going to do the Shema once a day, or literally putting a coin in a pushka every morning. And if you don't have a pushka in your house, you could literally take a cup and say, this is my designated charity box. And every morning I'm going to put a coin, a quarter, a dollar, whatever it is. And that's a powerful mitzvah that actually has a tremendous effect, of course, on ourselves, but on our brothers and sisters in Israel. And that is something that has been timelessly taught. But I will share just one little thing that I always think is poignant. Jacob had a brother, Esav, right? We're going back to Bible times, who hated him. It says Esav hates Jacob. That's a direct text. Now, they're going to meet up eventually, right? So Jacob runs away after he takes the blessings from his father, because Esav wants him dead. So what happens when they meet up again? It says Jacob prepares with three things, three different ways he prepares for this meeting. Number one is he prepares for war. His brother wants to kill him. His brother's advancing on him with an army, 400, I think it says, soldiers. He sends gifts, right? So appeasement. And lastly, he prays. So in the end of the day, it's unequivocal that we have the same exact thing. We have to fight and defend our country. And if you think about it, the war is bigger than our country. It's about each and every one of us. You and I live in America. We think we're safe. Those people want us just as dead. And if they had the opportunity, they would do it. That's number one. Prayer and charity are very important. But when it's a time for war, you don't stop to pray. That was a direction that Moses was told by God. So now is not the time to pray. Now is the time for action. But in Jewish systems, we know that some people are going to be praying and some people are going to be fighting. We need that balance. And the appeasement time is over, right? When someone wants you dead, you don't. The time for gifts is no longer. So I will share something very fascinating that I read last night. If anyone here is familiar with a person known as Nas Daily, N-A-S Daily. This is a very hugely followed young Palestinian Israeli, right? But when I say Palestinian Israeli, I mean he was born in the Israel proper side, not what they call over the green line. He's a citizen. he's huge. I mean, I haven't watched his videos in a long time, but he has a tremendous following. He put out a note yesterday that after a lot of thoughts, and he's going public, and he knows you lose a lot of people when you're an Arab and you say you support Israel. But he said, I don't want to live under their rule. So from now on, he's calling himself an Israeli Palestinian. Israel first in the title, not a Palestinian Israeli.
How old?
He's got to be like 30. It's huge. We're not talking about a guy with 10,000 followers. We're talking about a guy with millions, or way up there. I can find out the exact number. So the thing is that a lot of us see the news and we automatically see so many people that are not supporting Israel for whatever ignorant and stupid reason. But just remember, that's actually a minority in the United States. They make a lot of noise and people are afraid to speak up even within supporters, which is sad. But it's our job to remember who we are and what we represent and to always be proud of that. And the fact is, God created the world in a way that we're always persecuted, and I don't have the excuses for God. But that's a fact on the grounds. We can go through our history. We say it in the Haggadah. For those of you, was anyone here at the rally last night? So Rabbi Alush spoke about this, right? The fact is, in every single generation, they rise against us to destroy us. It uses a very strong word, l'chalo seinim, literally to destroy us, not to hurt us. But God saves us every single time. Does that mean that we don't have casualties? I mean, I don't have to tell anyone. The history of Jewish people, you know just as well, if not better than me. But the fact is we're still here. Am Yisrael Chai is not just a slogan, it's the fact. And we've had a lot of suffering to still be here. But the way I look at it, it's so much, this life we would never change. There's no reason. We are the reason why this world goes around, with morals, values, ethics, teachings. And I know the famous age-old question, but why us? Right? Like, let someone else be. It's a great responsibility and it comes with a lot, but celebrate it. And so in most people, and this is kind of some of the themes of the speeches, was a little bit on the negative side. Our point is to be proud of who you are. Stand up. Don't be ashamed. I shared this on Yom Kippur. I spoke this year when so Chabad had a menorah downtown that was vandalized. I might have shared about this a little bit. And it was during one of the Stop the Steal rallies, right? So you have all these extreme. I think anyone who shows up to a rally like that is extreme, right? Regardless of whether we like the politics or not. To show up at a rally, you have to have some sort of a gutsy side to you. And so there's a streamer, somebody who videos everything he does, and he's an anti-Semite, and he sees the menorah and he says, down with Hanukkah, up with Christmas type of a message. And he tears down the sign. It's on Shabbos. I'm in Binghamton. This is like the Hanukkah of COVID. So, right, COVID starts in March. We're now in December. And I'm in Binghamton. I get these emails. Shabbat ends. I look at my phone. There's all these emails from people I don't know that have contacted Chabad saying, hey, by the way, your menorah was vandalized and here's a video clip of it. So the job on us is now we have to make sure there's a prosecution, right? We have to make sure we press charges so that person is prosecuted. So we do that. And when I made that phone call that night, and this is what I shared on Yom Kippur, I had a thought for a moment. I'm like, here's an anti-Semite who's a streamer. He's all over the internet. Do I want to be the face of this? Because whoever makes that complaint becomes the face of it. Even though it's an organization's menorah, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, let my dad make the phone call. He could deal with the repercussions, right? That's honestly what went through my mind for a minute. I'm like, this could get worse and ugly, right? If the guy wants to like put your address out there or whatever else. And I thought about that for a minute. And then I said, why am I hiding? Right? If that's what happens, it's because I'm Jewish and I have to be proud of who I am and know that, you know, there are people who do not like us everywhere. But I had that moment. And on Yom Kippur, that's really what I spoke about. This idea that we have to really be proud of who we are. Not apologize for who we are, but be proud of it. And the fact is, Israel is our homeland, and Israel is our country. And of all weeks that they started this new terror campaign, it's not new, we all know that. The first Rashi, the first commentary on the first verse of the Torah. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the commentary says, wait a second, the Torah is a book of laws. It's not a storybook. So we don't need to start with this. We can start all the way a book and a half later with the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people. Why is it starting with the story of creation? And one of the things that the commentary over there shares is this is an answer to the people who will tell you that Israel does not belong to the Jewish people. You'll point back and say, God created the world, and God said, this land is your land. And so you think about this, obviously, does that answer? I mean, the fact is our politicians in the United Nations don't always sing that message that, God gave the land, but more and more people are saying that, right? Because in the end of the day, people can argue all day long and say, what do you mean? You took it from us, we took it from them. You got to go back to the beginning. And the beginning is that God created this world with a reason, gave this land to the Jewish people for a reason, and it's our land. There's no other argument that can be made. They can argue all day long. So really, we have to be unapologetically proud to be Jewish. And not always is that easy, right? I have my moments. I shared one story, for example. But the fact is that when you're proud of who you are, other people respect you. Other religions respect you. Other Jews respect you. Maybe they don't live your lifestyle or you're out in the open practice, but they know that this is the right thing. And so we sit around, every single one of us have friends in all different corners of conversations, unless you live in a vacuum. And you know that like some people say things and you just don't want to get into it with them. And I'm not here to tell you to get into it with them, but at least they should know what you believe and where you stand. Right? You don't have to start arguing with people because what you could if you want, but most times those arguments don't change anyone's minds. But at least they should know who you are and what you believe. And this is not just the non-Jewish people. I mean, we know in the Jewish world itself, you find different opinions. Sadly, I don't know how there's any opinions on this, but there are. And that's part of being in exile, that people don't see things for what they are. But in the end of the day, our job as a Jewish nation is to be proud of who we are, support Israel just with our pride is a huge deal. That's what I was saying last night. I didn't come for speeches, but presence, and that's also why maybe there should have been media, is very big deal. Like, let people know that there are thousands of people that are standing up for Israel. I can tell you that on my phone, of every single non-Jewish person that I have contacts with, have reached out and said, hey, we're thinking of you. Is your family safe? It's a tremendous thing. But I also know there are crazy people out there who do not care. Don't let that get to you, right? We have to stay in our lane, as they say. Because if we're worried about that, then we're worried about a lot of other things.
There are people out there that riots in New York.
Right. No, so it's funny. I know.
On TV and
So I do know what you're referring to, but there was I actually walked around, right? I stood next to a publicist for probably a half hour of the evening, and we were speaking about this, and she said that her suggestion would have been they can come, but only broadcast it on the 10 o'clock news. So you can tell them this cannot be a live segment. But hindsight's 20/20, and this was done so fast. I don't have any problems with anyone who arranged it. They worked really hard and really fast, and you don't have the same amount of time to chew over conversations and decisions. So, and I know it was at the suggestion of the police department, not necessarily realizing they could have kind of done this, hey, yes, but only at 10 can you put it on type of a thing. So none of the things I have said are complaints. I thought it was definitely an important thing that happened and fast. Could there have been better things done? We can talk about every single event. We can do that too. So nothing that I'm saying is a complaint. It's just differences of opinion. Politicians, they thought would become a political grandstanding. And I'm like, no, my opinion in that always is let people know that the governments also are with us as a community. And so, it's just different perspectives. I think part of that is being apologetically a Jewish thing, and I'll explain, but I could be wrong. If most Jews are liberals and most politicians that are supporting it very openly are conservative, and if your board is more liberal, this is a fact. Listen, if I don't need to say facts, it took Hillary Clinton and President Obama till yesterday to support this. I just want to put that out there. I'm very happy they wrote a letter of support, but most people put it out on Saturday.
Except the president.
Yeah, I'm not talking that. Yes, I'm not mixing it. President Biden had an event on Sunday, but did he mention anything on Friday? The State Department did.
He didn't.
He didn't.
Supposed to say something
Today. Right, so
little
my
bit.
point is, I really believe, and I could be so wrong, because I wasn't in their meetings. But I think that they were afraid that they're gonna have all these conservative people who are gonna be standing up and scream, saying words of support. And they're not gonna see the same word. Our governor I don't know, did she say anything? She probably did. I haven't followed this stuff. But I think that's part of it, people support different politicians, and they don't want only those people to show up, because those are very vocal. I know that in the end of the day, we need everyone to stand up. I can tell you something that I always find very fascinating. We are very into politicians celebrating Hanukkah with us, right? So we do a large menorah lighting. We ask the governor to come. If the governor doesn't come, we ask the mayor. We kind of go down the line, top to bottom. We would love for all of them to be there. One year we had Governor Brewer, right? Governor Brewer was, if we all remember, SB 1070. Was that her? I don't know if you were living here yet. Was SB 1070 Governor Brewer?
She was.
Oh, okay. There were a lot of people who didn't like her. Let's put it that way. Obviously, every conservative liked her. I'm saying, but in the Jewish community, we're a mix of everything. And so we got a lot of hate mail and said, why are you having her light the menorah? She doesn't deserve it. She's this, she's that. She hates Mexicans. It was an anti-immigrant type of I don't want to say anti-immigrant. It was something that didn't allow people to come over the border so easily, and asked and kind of had a very strongly worded law that would send them back, if I remember correctly. I also don't remember the exact. I just remember it was very, very polar. And so in that Hanukkah, I was replying then to people and said, listen, what greater, it's not about the person in the office, it's about the office. We want people to know that religious liberty and celebration is cherished and valued by our government. And so this time it's Brewer, next time it's Hobbs. We have people who send us the same stupid emails because Mayor Gallego is the one lighting our menorah. I mean, you'd think that people understand the bigger picture here, that a public politician is supporting our rights and everyone's right to religious freedom. It's not about the person, it's about the office, but people are very trivial and tribal. So that's kind of, I try to look at the bigger picture, and I appreciate every politician. Nothing to do with Israel, because I really believe this. I've heard this, and I'm sure many of you also have heard this. I really believe that any politician that is in office, you guys can call me naive, truly wants what's best for the country. And they just have different opinions of what is best for the country. And so we don't have to always like their policies, but we have to at least, if we don't believe this, we have a bigger problem. We have to internally believe that they want what's best. They could be wrong, but why would anyone want to, I mean, again, if you're going to say politicians are fascists, that's a different conversation. But I am talking about a level-headed conversation on this, that the people who subject themselves to all the scrutiny in public office, and it hurts their families and themselves, can not only do it just for ego. It takes a lot of ego to do that, but it's because they believe that what they can bring to the table for their country or their city or their state is what they think is best for the state. If we don't believe that, that's another real hard conversation, but I believe that, even the ones we like and don't like. And so regardless of what side of the aisle the conversation begins from, I really believe that. But again, everyone can have their own opinions, and some people have an opinion just for a specific all other politicians want what's best for the country, but that guy, I'm not mixing into that. Not to, I don't want this to be a politics conversation. I want it to be about Jewish pride and knowing that what we do truly affects and protects our brothers and sisters in Israel. And that is a message that is timeless. You can look at messages that were during the Yom Kippur War, same time of the year. So for me, I'm a Chabad follower. I look at how the Rebbe spoke then. It was a terrible time as well. Thousands of deaths. It didn't look like this, right? This is just savagery, animals. But same thing, our morale as Jews was just in the toilet, if I could be very frank. And it was the same thing. You do a mitzvah here, you are providing a protective shield to your brothers and sisters in Israel. What bothers them hurts us. You know, I shared this in my email yesterday that we sent out with the events, and I believe it. I know it's true. All of us know if you cut your toenail too much, the pain that happens at your toe disturbs your head, right? I don't mean you're getting a headache. It makes it hard to function. It's like constantly on your mind. And that's the same thing with the Jewish people. We're all connected like a body. And what hurts someone in Israel hurts us here, and we see it. I mean, we're all experiencing it, but we don't necessarily use that parable of sorts. And so the fact is, in the reverse of that, when you do something positive here, it affects that same body across the world. And so it's really important for us to always focus on that. And I will just end off with one thing, and then we can either continue this or other questions. But I found this quite fascinating. So like I said, I was reading about things during the Yom Kippur War. It had nothing to do with this attack. Yom Kippur was the 50th anniversary, so a lot of things were coming out. There was a rabbi who was interviewed from one of these large Orthodox organizations. What is the standard reply, the standard thing to do when something is going wrong with the Jewish people? Fast and prayers. That's like what Jewish law talks about. Well, also the Shema, but fasting and prayers. They wanted to during the Yom Kippur War, it was the beginning of the war, we all know, and I only know this from history, but I know that's what I'm saying. You live this, and you know how it looked so bleak in the very beginning, right? In fact, if I have understood history correctly, if the Egyptian soldiers didn't pause for a break, they would have been all the way in Jerusalem. They would have overrun every single defense, but they paused to regroup, right? History tells us this. Anyways, during that time, the Jewish United States world, in the large Orthodox kind of rabbinic circles, which people would follow whatever they're saying, wanted to pose a public fast day and prayer for all Jewry. And so they were preparing for this, and they get this message from the Rebbe, which this is what I want to share. I think it's so fascinating. This month is the most joyous month in the Jewish calendar. So much so that in daily prayers throughout the year, there is a small little confession, kind of what we call the Tachna, kind of what we do on the high holidays. It's daily, it's short and brief. But if it's a joyous day throughout the year, if there's a wedding that day or a circumcision or a holiday, we don't recite that prayer. This entire month, we don't recite the prayer, which tells us that this month is all about joy. And so the Rebbe sent a message to these rabbis and said, I know what you're planning, but the truth is this month we have to actually focus on the joy, not on the sadness. And so we can affect whatever we were going to do through crying, through being very joyful and serving God with joy, doing mitzvot with joy. And so that's the challenge. It is a challenge, right? You look at the images, and by the way, there's no way to escape it. If you want to read the news, the pictures are just in your face, and they're still coming out, and they're finding more atrocities, and it's impossible to read the news without images. And so it's very difficult to be joyous. It takes a lot of effort to overcome that. And it was kind of the message we celebrated Simchat Torah. Everyone already knew what was going on. In fact, I heard, and I feel very bad for this community, they canceled Simchat Torah because how can you be joyous? No city's names. It's in Arizona somewhere. And they made a memorial service, right? And we understand the sentiments, but we know that the fact is, if we do that, then terrorism has won. Their whole point is to disrupt everything. And so really, to find the joy isn't easy, but we all have it. And we can fight for Israel with joy, or we can choose to fight it with depression, which it's very easy to choose that way.
Are they smart enough are the Palestinians smart enough to know that this is a joyous
Yeah,
moment?
they did it. They chose it on
They
purpose.
chose-
It says they chose it on purpose. So I think that's very important to always remember that. That pride is us winning. Depression is us losing. In fact, last night there was bar mitzvah. The rabbi's son, so the rabbi is the Chabad rabbi for Israelis. He recently moved here. And you can imagine he has, first of all, he has family there. Number two is he was like, how do you celebrate a bar mitzvah during this with music and dancing? And so he was very torn. Should he cancel it or not? And he had put it on like a little WhatsApp group that we're on. And all of us kind of understood the question. It's a very difficult question. At the end of the day, first of all, what's his son going to think? That we paused Jewish life and celebration and milestones? Number one. Number two is, if we cancel it, who won? That's exactly what they want. They want us to stop living as Jews. They want us to stop existing. So you can't stop that. You have to do it with even more determination. Correct. There's a Yiddish saying for that. For those of you who appreciate Yiddish, Tracht gut. If you think good, wird sein good. It automatically will be good. Now, don't get me wrong. That is the most difficult thing to do, right? It's work, but it's very powerful. And so the fact is, like somebody said yesterday, and it's all over the news, we haven't even begun to see what's going to be, because right now they're still working the Israel side. They haven't even really touched Gaza yet, other than bombs. But if they're going in, which is what everyone's talking about, we know that what we saw was just a beginning of what's going to go on. And so it's very important to really, we have to do our part. I mean, most of us are not picking up guns and going to Israel. So I mean, maybe someone is here, I don't know. But the fact is we can do the parts that we can do, and that is every single way that we can do it. But I'm talking about the mitzvah way, right? You know, I'm not talking about the donating way, which is also, there are tremendous organizations that are supporting Israel in so many ways. Like I have an aunt who lives in Ashkelon. My aunt and uncle live in Ashkelon. They direct Chabad there, which is a huge institution there. It includes schools, shoals, soup kitchens. And so they never stop. Right? They even have special sound rooms for children, for trauma. They never stop because rockets always were hitting Ashkelon and Sderot. Those are the two like most common recipients of these missiles. And so she had written to us something that was very interesting. She wrote on our family WhatsApp group that, you know, they themselves are collecting money specifically for these ballistic helmets, more ballistic vests, and something else. And I was reading it at first, and I'm like, that's for soldiers, right? To give them good equipment. And she said and she writes at the bottom, it's not just for soldiers. All of our volunteers throughout the city are going out on the streets, and they need to be protected too. If not, they can't support. So there are so many tremendous organizations. In our shul on Shabbat, there's a couple that their son lives in Efrat, I think, and he's a nurse and she's a nurse, or he might be a technician in a hospital and she's a nurse, I don't remember. But they have an organization called Unity Warriors, and they just give 3 things out: ballistic helmets, knee pads, right, because there's a lot of that, and combat ready medical kits for stopping the bleed, right? Because the amount of people that will be saved is based off of what we can treat on the spot. And so there's so many amazing things going on. It takes a tragedy. A cousin of mine has been posting, he lives in Florida, but he's been posting a lot of pictures of different like things that he's finding from Israeli social media accounts. And he shared this picture. It's 2 people in a kitchen in Tel Aviv, in a restaurant, koshering their entire kitchen. They don't serve kosher. They're koshering their kitchen so that when they support soldiers on the home front, everyone can eat it, not just people who don't keep kosher, right? So remember this, 3 days ago, Israel was at a real split. Unfortunately, all based on the law. The law, should soldiers be able to go to yeshiva, not fight? Are we going to do justice reform? All these things. And it really split, sadly, the Jewish people in Israel. So much so that I think many of you saw this. In Tel Aviv, they do an outdoor Kol Nidre service. And maybe you read this, I'll just share it. The Supreme Court of Israel said you cannot have a mechitza, you can't have a divider at that service, because that is discrimination. All right, so now you have a Supreme Court telling you that you can't have mechitza. I'm not going into that. But I read that, and it's very disgusting. First of all, what I learned is even when they did the service, you're talking about thousands of people, and the mechitza was in the beginning, only in the front. So at the service kind of point of where the cantor is, it was separated. After that, the crowds were overflowing, and everyone stood next to whoever they wanted to stand next to. But they couldn't even do it in the front. So people come to the service. I read this as a first-hand account. I didn't realize how crazy this is. This guy writes, he came to the service with his wife and kids. They're standing next to each other, right? They anyways would have stood next to each other. And protesters are there, Jewish protesters, screaming how dare they come to a service. So it was never about religious in the sense of putting a divider in a service. It was about religion. It manifested first about a divider. But what it was really about was don't pray to God. Why are you celebrating Yom Kippur? This is a guy who is not religious. He wrote that he sent his kids home because it was very dangerous for them. There were protesters throwing things. And then he went to a real shul because he's like, I am proud to be Jewish. He never thought about dividers. And now he did a 24 hours of Yom Kippur properly in a shul instead of just doing one small little service in a park. So sadly, it takes a tragedy to unite us. And then it's our goal to make sure that continues. And that's the work that we'll have for months. Yeah.
You answered a lot of my questions. I do have another one, and I don't know the reason. Why is it that Israel is responsible to provide water, food, and electricity to Gaza?
That's I'm not so educated on that. I mean, I do know that it's kind of by default that no Arabs wanted the Arabs. So Jordan technically should have been taking care of the Palestinian people, but they wiped their hands clean. And then for Israel's security's sake, they said, listen, this is my take. I am sure someone here is more educated on this. Israel's like, listen, we don't want you in our territories because you want to kill us. So we're going to close that border, but we can't just close the door, right? In Jewish practice, we realize that,
Why don't they?
say Egypt should do it, right?
No, why don't us? Israel has.
Well, gasoline for their generators has to come from somewhere. Israel has an embargo because of safety. So they have to kind of control. I don't know that Israel is supplying everything. Israel is the crossing for everything.
But they cut it off.
Yeah, right now.
The answer to that is Hamas is a terror organization. Any money that comes in, they keep. They don't let it out to.
Right.
So they keep it to support their organization.
Germany and Austria were sending money to the Palestinians. And it never really got to them, and they cut it off.
Right. They said construction materials were used for rockets.
Anything that comes in Hamas controls.
The question is, we all know this. The question is why other people don't see it. That's the age-old question that more and more people struggle with. Now, I'm sure many of you are seeing this. If you support some of the larger American liberal causes, not in a bad way, I'm saying, you might be for the Women's March. I'm calling it a liberal cause just because of how it plays into politics. I'm not saying it's a cause that is liberal. Or maybe BLM. And you stood side by side with people fighting for a cause that was dear to you and to them. Those same people do not support Israel. Right. This is what you find more and more. And I'm not even talking about the cause. I'm talking about people. And that's bothering a lot of Americans. There have been a lot of Jewish Americans. There have been a number of articles over the last 3 days that I've read of this specific point. That's like, where are the people that I thought were arm in arm with me for causes? Where are they in support of Israel? Some are supporting, but we don't need to look further than 8 people in Congress that some people just don't see it.
How they wanna tie the money for Israel with the Ukraine. You wanna read that?
No, I think it was, I read something else that somebody said, don't send it to Ukraine, send it to Israel.
No, they said now they wanna tie.
Together?
Someone suggested tying it together.
I have a question. Are you familiar with the Enigma Code in the Second World War?
No, tell me about it.
The British
I know.
broke the
Cool.
German code. So they could read the German
Right.
letters.
It was a
Yeah.
Jew who did it. Yeah.
Problem they had was if they took action based on what they were able to get initially,
People would figure it out,
the people think
Right.
that and
and they would change the code.
they would change. If they took that action to stop
Right.
the plan, it would tell the Germans.
That we figured it out.
They figured it out, so they didn't do it and people died. It's a pretty tough moral question.
Right. I think I know where you're getting at this. It's like, maybe we figured it out, but.
There are hostages now, and everything is, we gotta save these hostages. But by doing that and holding back, you allow the Iranians to develop a nuclear weapon. And if they develop that nuclear weapon, because we held back to save those hundred
Yeah,
hostages, then what do you do?
I know what you
Then
mean.
when
This
they
is like
drop it
the
on top
complexities of, I don't know the answer to that. And that's where I say, thank God I'm not in government, but I do know that. In Jewish, there are Jewish laws about captivity. Like, should you pay for a captive? Because in the biggest mitzvah that you can find is actually Pidyon Shvuyim. And sadly, in our history, this happened a lot. Jewish people would be kidnapped, ransom numbers were insanely high, and the question was, should we pay it? And it was all the Jewish law, the way it addresses it is, will it embolden them or not? In other words, if you pay it, are they gonna go capture another person now so they can make more money? And so it's not a black and white answer, but there's a lot of guidance in Jewish law. I do know that to answer these questions is just never simple.
The last thing.
It's simple though, every life is important,
Before
and
I
if we
left,
can.
there was talk about them wanting to, use the hostages to get prisoners.
Right. Negotiation is the word I was gonna use. Negotiating for hostages, Judaism says.
Yeah.
That's got some very strong stuff on it, right? If you're gonna release a murderer who's gonna kill more Jews, should you?
But they've done that before.
Of course, that doesn't make anything right.
No, I'm just saying, they have.
Prisoner swaps, yeah, of course.
Prisoner swaps.
Listen, you never want to be the parent who has to know about this problem, and you never want to be the government who has to make a decision based on this problem.
True.
So in Judaism, there's something that we call, it's called Das Torah, which, you go to the rabbi, you say, what does the Torah tell us about this? I say the rabbis because anyone can interpret Torah how they want it to be. You want it to be the correct interpretation and explanation. And then you're doing what God wants. And it takes away your own personal decision from it. I can't imagine how the rabbis grapple with that, but they have all the texts and case studies to analyze from generations before us of what to do. And they're not working out of just, oh, I think this is the right thing. I feel this. That's not how it works in Jewish law. It's a constant, I don't want to use the word struggle. It's a conversation and dialogue of, well, there's this, there's that. This says this, so we should do that. But actually, this one disagrees with that opinion because of a factor that you didn't include. And so it's not a question that most rabbis aren't qualified to answer those types of questions. Okay, that's really in depth.
It's an interest in, 1945, Truman decided to drop the atomic bomb in Japan. He had been told, and it's been confirmed, that if the US, the Allies had invaded Japan, it would have cost the Allies 1 million casualties. And he was asked about it. He said the reason he did it, he said, there's no way in the world I could have faced mother, wife, children of any American soldier who died, and I had in my hands what it would take to
Finish it in one. Wow.
I watched a Zoom presented by VOA yesterday night in America. It's one of the oldest Jewish nations. And they had Gerald Zizi or something like that on. And he said the negotiations were in the past right at this point, because he have, just like he was saying, they have to deal with the crisis right now, get it under control to protect Israel before they can even deal with that.
Right. I actually thought it's funny, Connie we don't listen to radio, TV, or phone calls on Shabbat. So Saturday, everything we know is from people coming to shul tell us things, or our security guard telling us things. And so Connie, though, didn't come to shul on Saturday. Like, I met her lunchtime, and she's like, she knew everything that's going on. Like, how do you know everything? She's like, a few years back, a different war that we were in, she signed up to this WhatsApp group, and they send out, it's not a TV or radio station, it's private individuals who just want to make sure people are getting the real news in America. So she's like, her phone started like lighting up like crazy with all these messages and updates. And so, like, I knew about this from her. Last night, I read something, it's about this young kid, the Palestinian Israeli, who's now an Israeli Palestinian. And I saw it I'm on a WhatsApp group now. That's the same. It ends up being around the same WhatsApp group now. A couple of days ago, someone said, if you want to get real updates, click on this link, you'll join their group. So last night when I tell her this, 5 minutes later, she's reading her phone. She's like, oh, it says it in this group. I said, what's the group you're on? So I am in group number 6. There are 2,000 members in every group. On WhatsApp, you can only have 9. They cannot take any more members.
9 members?
No, 9 groups.
Oh, 9
8,
groups.
that's 18,000 members getting direct updates on their phone. On Telegram, you can have more. So now everything's, if you want to join for updates, WhatsApp's closed, you can hit Telegram. Telegram, as many of you know, is another messaging platform. I don't know what its limits are. I don't have it on my phone. But the idea is like, people want to read the real news and what's happening right now. Not when you go to like the larger mainstream, it's not the same speed, and they take bigger stories sensationally. So going back to what you said, this is why I'm bringing this up. About 10 o'clock today, which is what, 6 p.m. over there? I don't know. Who knows the time? Or 8 p.m. I think 8 p.m. Yeah, so 8 p.m. Their latest update then was that at I think it was at 10 o'clock, said that they're still dealing with terrorists inside Israel.
Yeah.
They don't think they caught everyone. And so there's like gunfights happening near state roads and near another kibbutz that they wrote. So it really honestly is, there was a huge, we know, failure, not just in the prevention side, but even in the reaction side. I think many of you know that it took over 6 hours for the IDF to mobilize people to those locations. I mean, we know with active shooters in America that all police departments have changed how they react. They don't wait anymore and stage, because every second counts.
What time was it in Israel when they first attacked?
I think they said 7 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
It was morning, early morning.
Saturday.
Yeah. The first place was that rave, a music festival that was all about peace. That's the biggest.
Sure.
Well, so Israel Simchas Torah is on Saturday.
Right.
It started in the morning.
The festival.
No, the festival is all night. Started Friday night. Okay, let me explain. I think, okay, now I understand what you're asking. Okay, in America, we do Shmini Atzeret
Right.
and then Simchat Torah. So if you're celebrating a 2-day holiday, Friday night is Shmini Atzeret. Saturday night is Simchat Torah, dancing with the Torah. In Israel, it's in one night. So Israel dances with the Torah Friday night and Saturday morning, which is what we do Sunday morning.
Yeah.
In a lot of shuls, that's how it is. You just have one night. In, let's say, Chabad and some other shuls, we do Hakafot both nights. So we have Friday night and Saturday night. But if your shul is semi-traditional, even if it's not an Orthodox shul, and you're doing a 2-day end of holiday, you're dancing with the Torah Saturday night. But-
Except CPI did it Friday.
Because they're doing one day. That's why I said if it's semi-traditional, right? If they're doing the 2 days. So Friday night is Simchat Torah there. They're dancing already Friday night into Saturday. So they hit it on the holiday. So that festival is timed to be on this holiday on purpose. It's music, it's dancing, they connected
That's started in sundown.
Friday night. No, because Saturday night their holiday's over. It wasn't like a religious organization, so they're not gonna wait for after.
Rabbi, I think it was the middle of the night, you could see many once that people, they stormed in and.
Correct, but it was 7 a.m. It was no, that was correct. 7 a.m. People, soldiers are sleeping.
So when did they go into Ariel? By the way.
I don't think they went into Ariel.
I think they did.
Isn't Ariel in the Shomron? I think it's more West Bank. Ariel is.
It's Ariel's West Bank.
Yeah, no, this is Gaza. This is more south.
I know, but I think they went into.
Oh,
Ariel.
the army did? Or terrorists?
The terrorists.
I don't know, there's,
Have you ever been to Ariel?
no, I just know the name. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
I belong to this, I think I mentioned this before, it's on Facebook, it's called Life on the Border. It's on the Gaza Strip, and there are few administrators, and, they were all set up in the house, and they're getting tons and tons of reports. At the time, you could hear the rockets going off, they put the camera outside and running to the safe rooms. And I think she said it was 7 hours before they took her from there.
Same idea.
But they might have done it early.
Yeah, no, I know that I do. I mean, they'll study all of this later, I'm sure.
Well, the sad thing about the safe room is that it's safe, but they have no doorknobs.
Right, you read it.
So you could be in there, but they could get in.
There was one family that helped out.
Don't I mean?
Right, I saw, and then ones that were safe, they firebombed the houses, so it's not. They're just
My
savages.
nephews are, one is the oldest one is on the Syrian border, he's Galani. And the other one is on the Lebanese
Border.
border, yeah.
Yeah, so we gotta pray for them. Actually, there were some deaths in the north on the Lebanese border, Israeli soldiers, yeah. My brother and sister-in-law and their kids are in Spot right now. They haven't been able to leave yet. They went for the holiday. So like they're waiting for flights to figure out. Hopefully they'll get out Thursday.
But the great thing in our family is that our relatives who are American kids don't want to come home. They want to stay here with their Israeli friends and family.
Right,
They don't want to come home. Their
Yeah.
parents are saying, come home.
I mean, it's a very tough thing for American parents who have children learning in Israel, right? On the one hand, you don't wanna cave. And you want them to be in Israel. On the other hand, you wanna make sure they're safe. Like I spoke to a salesperson that I work with from California. His daughter is in seminary this year in Israel, and he's working on getting a flight home for her. My brother has a daughter in seminary in Israel, and I haven't asked him, like, what are they considering? The school is in the north, so it's, it kind of feels distant to a degree of the real action, but there's action everywhere, and that's the crazy. So,
Well, St. Alexander's,
yeah, I don't know where that is. Is that in the center?
I think it is, but they brought everybody back.
Because it's a lot of schools are like, listen, it's a liability if we keep you here and we have to protect you. So I, obviously, like I said, I don't know what, oh, there are schools that are gonna have that attitude, there are schools that are gonna have a different attitude, and then there are families that are gonna say, listen, I'm happy. Some kids are gonna come home, but I wanna keep my, like what you just said, I don't wanna leave. I don't wanna give in.
So on another note, and I don't have all the facts, but on January 7th, there is a valley-wide event on anti-Semitism. And a gentleman by the name of Jonah Cohen is coming. And it's how to respond to people who call you anti-Semites, who say, who are anti-Semitic and question you about your Jewry. And it's basically the Socratic method of arguing, of answering a question with a question.
So they're teaching Jews how to do that?
Uh-huh.
Just checking. I thought we own that.
But that's, it's a full day, starting at 10 in the morning with kids from 7th grade to 12th grade. And it goes all day. And
So it's empowering people.
it's empowering people and how to answer with a question so that people
Interesting.
can help figure out the answers. And
Takes a lot of guts. I see, I mean, we all see just, I know I'm interrupting you, but college campuses. Jewish students on college campuses, sometimes, depending on which campus they're on, feel very afraid to speak up, right? Because 31 groups of Harvard are pro the Hamas attack. 31, that's not 1, 2, or 3. In fact, the president emeritus of Harvard said he's so disgusted. I don't know what the current president said, but that was in the news. 31 groups, right? That's not a normal thing.
wait, we're what?
Pro-Hamas are, after this attack, they have spoken up.
What about the Michigan campus? It's the same thing.
Yeah, because that's, yeah. So for young students, it really is. Like when they speak up on campus, they are brave, right? That takes a lot of guts because you know you're against the tide, unfortunately.
It's very interesting to talk about the group in Congress.
Right, the squad.
In before Hitler took over in 1932, the Reichstag had 3%
Supported them.
were Nazis. And a year later, Hitler was one of them.
Right,
So a small.
right. You're saying a margin is not necessarily a marginalized group. No, listen, it used to be 4, now it's 8. Right, if you think about this group. I actually, on the politics side, I don't know, and this will be a conversation off of Zoom, meaning it's not relevant to today. But it's very interesting to see what each person feels of their own congressional leaders and senators. Like, are they really supporting us or not? And does that change how you might vote? And that's not a new thing, right? Abraham Lincoln's, what was it called? Abraham Lincoln wrote a thing, or signed, I should say, an order. I think it was number 8 or number 16 during the Civil War against Jews. I don't know if you know that.
No.
It was a mistake. Basically, it wasn't Abraham Lincoln, sorry, it was Grant. You listened, that's Grant. Thank you. But not necessarily. When you read the history of it, no, I'll explain what I mean. I'll explain the history, and thank you. Yeah, it was Ulysses S. Grant. When you study the history of that, his father was a no good person and was trying to sell things. You know, they kind of embargoed the South, right? No more cotton being sold. Right. His father was trying to do business deals with Jewish partners. And so his reaction was, let's shut this down. All Jews are doing this. And then obviously it never lasted because Abraham Lincoln shut it down the next day. I got to get my facts straight on that. But I remember reading an interesting study about that. Jews had a conversation within themselves, not like an official conversation. It's like, do I now vote as a Jew and not vote for this guy for president because what he did to us? Or do I vote for what's good for this country and not worry about that? And it might have been the first reckoning for Jewish people in how they vote. And so it's very interesting now, like, if you feel supported by your own party or not, is a conversation that people will have in the next, and I don't know the answer, and I don't know that one party is not supporting Israel. I'm not saying that at all. But it is an interesting type of a thing.
Do you people remember the book Our Crowd, which took place during the Civil War, where Lincoln went to the Jews in the North to get money?
Who was it?
The name of the book was called
Our
Our Crowd. And Lincoln went to the Jews in the North, the business people, to raise money, and they gave him the money. And that was the start of several brokerage houses in New York.
Hold on, all right.
But get money for what?
1 second, could it be you're talking about the Lehman Brothers?
Go back.
I think it's the Lehman Brothers.
Yeah.
The Lehman Brothers, I only know this because I was asked to review a play. I don't know anything about the Lehman Brothers. The Lehman Brothers were Jewish, and so there's a play being written about them, and they want to make sure the Jewish information was correct, Shiva and this and that. They started a brokerage firm, kind of, it started as one thing, and then it grew and grew and grew, and it might have been, I don't know about for war, but
The Civil War, there was.
it started with cotton. First, they were just selling parts to help people with their cotton growing. Then they said, why aren't we just buying cotton and selling cotton? And then it became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it might be that. And I haven't read the book, so I don't know if that's what it was or
I
not.
read the book a long time ago, so I just remember the name of the book. But
Say the name again.
Our O-U-R.
Crowd.
Crowd.
All right, we'll check it out.
Yeah.
WD. Anyways, if I just wanted to bring this all into full circle, I think that the most important thing is, remember, we're all one body. And so doing a mitzvah here, and it can be anything. That's what I keep on telling people. A lot of people get scared when you say I'm committing to do a mitzvah, because first of all, they think it's every day, or they think it's very difficult. It doesn't have to be something difficult, and you don't have to say I'm doing it every day. Say I'm doing it once a week. Whatever you think will work for you, that you're just doing one thing extra, is a tremendous support for Israel. The entire "Are you Jewish?" on the street corner that Chabad does began during the Yom Kippur War to put on tefillin. Like, wrap your arm, protect soldiers. And so it could be something so tiny. It doesn't have to be something difficult. It's just doing something extra. If you want it to be meaningful, you find something that's meaningful to you. It's meaningful by default because you're doing it and it's helping. But it could be something meaningful, like however you choose, or whatever you choose. Shabbat candles. If you already light Shabbat candles, it might mean, hey, I'm going to make sure I do it before nightfall, or before sunset, I should say. Right? It could be perfecting something you already do. So these are very valuable and priceless things that we can do for Israel. And now we have to, of course, pray. Prayer is not only for healing, it's for morale, it's for a lot of stuff.